Hey, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, and we already know an offset is amazing for low and slow, but what about something hot and fast like searing a steak? Today, we find out if an offset is up for the challenge. So could you versus should you sear a steak in an offset style smoker are two very different questions. But let me fill you in on what's got me asking these questions. Just over a year ago, I did a 4-way sear test on my Kamado Joe where I did the stock grate versus cast iron versus soapstone versus caveman, where we threw that steak directly in the coals. And that caveman steer to this day stands out in memory as just packing a bunch of flavor, and it came number 2 in our blind taste test. Fast forward into last summer when I got my solo stove, I cooked a steak on that from start to finish, and it immediately blew away every campfire style steak that I've done. And I think in some ways that's because it acts a little bit like an offset, where it's reburning that smoke, and it's similar to a little bit more of a clean smoke profile versus the normal campfire steaks or any cooks that I've done. And so ever since I got my 60-gallon Carlisle offset smoker by Smoke North, I've been dying to answer the question, could and should we reverse and sear a steak on an offset smoker? To find out, let me take you back to yesterday when we started getting this steak ready with an overnight dry brine. So ever since I read the book Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, the overnight dry brine has been a staple of how we like to prepare our steaks, and especially our larger cuts of meat. And so that simply means just adding our salt a day in advance, which is going to give the salt time to deeply penetrate whatever it is we're cooking. But more importantly, it really unlocks the natural flavor. In this case, the beef is the hero. Plus, when we subject it to the heat, it's going to help it retain more moisture overall that ultimately results in a juicier and tastier steak. So to do this, if you've never done it, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can dry brine it with just salt and add your other ingredients, or you can do one of my favorite methods, which is just do all of this a day in advance, and it consolidates those steps down into one simple day in advance preparation. So I like to use a binder. You can use a whole bunch of things, but I found Truff hot sauce as my favorite. I say hot sauce, but don't worry, you will not taste any hot sauce. It just leaves behind some of that truffle oil, which gives us a bit of an umami flavor. Then I like to hit it with some salt and pepper. And so I'm using my favorite Texas style salt and pepper rub, which is mostly black pepper, salt mixed between Diamond Crystal and a little bit of Lowry's. And then I like to add a little bit of garlic for a good measure. And that has been turning out some amazing results, and particularly in this method with the overnight dry brine. We've got that all on our steak. It's really simple. We just throw that in the refrigerator, leave it uncovered overnight, and we are ready to go for today's cook. Let's build our fire and answer this question: could versus should we sear steak on an offset? Okay, let's insert a meter probe so we can keep track of today's cook. Okay, we're running around 250 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's get our steak on. I'm gonna go right in the center, try and be most even between where our fire's coming up and the collector. Let's close that up and set up our meter app to track. I'm gonna set the internal temperature for 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So the meter just sent an alert to my phone letting me know that our T-bone steak is about 15 minutes away from being ready to rest. So let me just fill you in on what the game plan is once that happens. I'll show you the graph here. You can see I've been adding a log when we started about every 15 minutes. So trying to keep that more of a wave versus a spike and a plummet type shape, where we keep our heat in between that 250 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And so far, that's been holding exactly where I want it to. So what I'm gonna do once the steak reaches that temperature is take it out, let it rest. I found using the meter, I've been able to sort of see that it gains anywhere between 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit during the rest. So while it's resting for 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to add a couple more pieces of wood and try and really sort of build up that fire and burn down to a nice charcoal bed so that we have a great bed of coals, and that's what we're gonna caveman sear our steak on. I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes when it's time to get that steak off, add some more wood, build up our bed, and get ready for a caveman sear and the offset. All right, our rest is complete, and just like I mentioned, that steak continued to carry over cook, nearly reaching the full 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's sitting out here in about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Still can see my breath. It is very chilly. So time to move to our sear. So as you can see, our coal bed is rocking. Now this is one of the reasons I ended up picking the Smoke North offset, is because it has a semi-insulated firebox, which allows me in these cool temperatures to maintain a coal bed. So when I add those splits, they just ignite right away. So as it got time to rest our steak, I put on 2 more splits. As you can see now, the fire has died down to a rockin' coal bed, which I think is going to be perfect for our caveman sear. Let's come nice and close and sear our steak on the coal bed in the firebox of my offset. So while I think I could easily suspend a grid from my 2 shelves for warming my splits, I want to recreate that caveman magic. So let's grab our steak and give it the good old caveman sear. And just like that, in a couple seconds, we've got what looks like a great sear. Well, our T-bone steak certainly looks and smells the part. Let's come nice and close, slice it, and see if it tastes half as good as it looks. That'll bloom out. That looks like a perfect medium rare. Pretty good edge to edge crust as well. Happy with that. Let's get a few slices. A little Malden smoked salt for one side. We'll do the other side without salt. All right, let's start with no salt first, then we'll go for the salt piece. That is way better than I was expecting. Let's try the salt. It's always going to be better, and then I'll give you my thoughts. Get some salt there. Cheers. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. And so these ones are always hard to give you the reaction, because what I find makes the perfect steak is a whole bunch of little things executed flawlessly versus going for one big thing. So we've got our umami binder, our salt and pepper, with that Lowry's and fresh cracked black pepper mix coming together, some garlic, some really, really clean smoke, and then that live fire coal caveman sear just puts the crust over the top. And so it's like a tidal wave of flavors in your tongue. Honestly, mine at least is like, what is going on here? It knows it loves it. But it's not like you'd have guests over and say, oh, that's a salted steak, or oh, that's a smoked steak. It would just be like, I don't know what that is, but I want another bite. That is an incredible steak. And so while I'm sure, too excited, can't think of my words. So while I'm sure there are many, many ways that you could sear a steak in an offset, whether we put a cast iron pan in there, got it really hot and seared it, or we put a grid above our firebox and seared, this easy peasy caveman sear right in the coal bed that we built up over our cook came out absolutely fantastic. And so that answers the question, I think both questions, should and could. Could you sear a steak in an offset grill? I'm going to go ahead and give that an absolute thumbs up, yes. And should you sear a steak? I'm going to give that 2 thumbs up. Just like my solo stove experience and my caveman sear on the Kamado Joe, this just brings a world of flavor, and you're not tasting coal. It's nice, it's clean, it's crisp. In fact, you could barely even tell this is smoked. That's one of the wonderful things about a nice clean fire, is it just tastes crisp and fresh, not dirty or smoky like you're licking a wet tree in the forest. That's really gross, but that's what dirty smoke can taste like, and we are getting none of that here. I hope you really enjoyed today's video. If you did, please let YouTube know to share it with others by smashing that thumbs up button, and let me know by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. Until next time, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, signing off. Oh yeah, a little more salt for me. Mm-hmm.